The stars were still, like silent witnesses to the passage of time. But far below, on the forgotten planet of Earth, a storm was brewing, a storm that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. 3,000 years had passed since the Galactic Council's devastating strike. 3,000 years since Earth's once thriving civilizations had been reduced to ashes, wiped out by the overwhelming might of an enemy who saw humanity as nothing more than a nuisance. Earth had been left to die, forgotten by the vastness of space, as its people scattered across the cosmos or vanished into the annals of history. The Council had assumed that humanity would fade into the darkness, their memory erased, their fight forgotten. But they were wrong. Earth was not dead. Humanity was not gone. And now, after millennia of hiding in the shadows, the last remnants of the human race had returned. The Aegis, a ship unlike any other, carrying the collective will of a people who had lost everything, hung in the vastness of space, a silent observer of the galaxy they once called home. The crew aboard it was not just a group of survivors. They were a people reborn, determined to reclaim their legacy, their planet, and their place in the stars. But their return was not met with peace. It was met with fear, with anticipation, and with a simmering tension that had been building for centuries. The Galactic Council had thought they were untouchable, their power absolute. They had underestimated humanity's resolve. The crew of the Aegis knew their mission was one of vengeance. But as they drew closer to Earth, something stirred within them, a deep, unspoken question. What had humanity become after all these years? What had they learned in exile? And, more importantly, what kind of reckoning awaited them on the planet that had once been their home? The captain of the Aegis, a battle-hardened leader with the weight of humanity's future on their shoulders, stood at the helm, staring out into the black abyss ahead. The stars that had once seemed so distant now felt closer, as though the universe itself were holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. "Captain," the ship's communications officer spoke up, his voice steady but laced with the edge of tension. "We've detected a signal. It's faint, but it's coming from Earth." The captain's heart skipped a beat. Earth? After all this time, was there still someone there? "Can we trace it?" the captain asked, their voice a mixture of hope and wariness. After centuries of silence, the idea of finding anything, anyone on Earth felt almost impossible. The officer nodded, fingers flying over the control panel. "I think so. It's coming from the northern hemisphere, deep in the ruins. We won't know what it is until we get closer, but it's real. Not a glitch or a false reading." A sharp silence fell over the bridge. The crew exchanged glances, each of them aware of the implications. Earth was supposed to be a wasteland, a hushed graveyard of forgotten memories. The Galactic Council had ensured that no life would remain there. But now, the signal, a pulse of energy that shouldn't have been possible, was suggesting otherwise. "Prepare for immediate descent," the captain ordered, their voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "We're going down. Get ready for whatever we find." The Aegis slowly began its descent, cutting through the atmosphere as the crew braced themselves for the unknown. The once blue planet, now a faint shadow in the distance, grew larger and larger in the viewport. For all they knew, Earth could be a barren wasteland, devoid of any life or hope. But the signal, no, it was something more. It was a message, and humanity needed to know who was still out there and what they were preparing to face. As they neared the surface, the captain couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the world they had once known. What had become of the cities, the people, the nations that had once flourished. What stories had been lost in the dust? The memories of Earth, memories of their families, their loved ones, their homes flickered through the captain's mind. But they pushed the emotions aside. Now was not the time for sentimentality. Earth had been a graveyard for too long. It was time to bring it back to life, or to burn the remnants of the past to the ground. Either way, humanity would have its reckoning. The ship's landing gear engaged with a loud thud as the Aegis touched down on the surface, the planet's dust swirling around it like a storm. For a moment, there was silence, an eerie, suffocating silence that felt as though the very air was holding its breath. The crew stood at attention, waiting for the order to disembark, for the moment when they would step onto Earth once again, centuries after its fall. The captain looked out at the barren landscape before them. Where there had once been sprawling cities and teeming forests, now there were only ruins and desolation. But amid the destruction, something was alive. Something was still there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. The captain turned to their team. "We move out in 10. Be ready for anything." As the crew prepared for their first steps onto Earth, they couldn't help but feel the weight of history pressing down on them. This wasn't just a mission of vengeance. It was a mission to reclaim their future. A mission to rewrite the past and take back what had been lost. The Galactic Council had attacked, destroyed their world, and cast them into exile. But they had returned, and now they would make their enemies regret ever underestimating humanity. The crew of the Aegis stepped out into the dust. The planet was silent, still, but deep beneath the surface, something stirred. A force older than the Council, more powerful than anything they had ever imagined, was watching. And it was waiting for them. As they moved toward the source of the signal, the captain couldn't shake the feeling that they were not the only ones with plans for Earth's future. The Aegis wasn't just an instrument of vengeance. It was the herald of a new era, a new chapter in humanity's history. But whether that future would be one of rebirth or destruction remained to be seen. And so, with every step, they moved closer to the reckoning that awaited them. The crew of the Aegis moved forward cautiously, their boots crunching softly against the coarse, ash-covered ground. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the silence was oppressive, as if the very planet itself was holding its breath. Earth, once vibrant and teeming with life, now lay in ruin, its once beautiful landscapes reduced to barren wastelands. Cities were nothing more than skeletal remains, their towering structures toppled and crumbled into heaps of rubble. Yet, despite the desolation, there was a faint energy that pulsed through the air, a low hum that seemed to emanate from deep beneath the surface. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The signal they had detected earlier was real. Earth had not been as abandoned as they had been led to believe. Captains stood at the front of the group, their eyes scanning the horizon. They had prepared for this moment for years, but nothing could have truly prepared them for the weight of what lay ahead. The thought of their once thriving home, now reduced to ruins, gnawed at them. Their people had been scattered, forced into hiding across distant planets, but they had never forgotten Earth. It was the heart of humanity, the cradle of their existence. And now, after 3,000 years of exile, they had returned to reclaim it. But what had they come back to? What had happened in all the time they had been gone? The Galactic Council had assured them that Earth was uninhabitable, a dead planet. The Council had wiped out all human resistance, scattering any survivors into the furthest reaches of space. Yet, here they were, standing on the very soil of the planet, sensing a presence that shouldn't exist. The captain's mind raced with possibilities. Had the council been lying? Had they left something behind? Or was there something else at work here, something far more dangerous than they could imagine? "Keep your eyes open," the captain murmured to the crew, their voice low and tense. "This is just the beginning." The team moved cautiously, scanning their surroundings for any signs of movement. The once lush forests had long since withered away, replaced by twisted, blackened trees that seemed to reach toward the sky like the fingers of the dead. The landscape had been scarred, as though the very earth itself had been scorched in the wake of the council's attack. The crew's boots sank into the ash with every step, each movement reminding them that they were walking on the grave of their civilization. Yet, despite the eerie stillness, there was something unsettling about the quiet. It wasn't just the absence of life, it was the absence of time. The ruins they passed by looked untouched, frozen in the moment of destruction. No new growth, no signs of recovery. Earth had been left to rot, abandoned by all but the memories of those who had once called it home. "We're close," one of the officers said, breaking the silence. "The signal's getting stronger." Captain nodded, their pulse quickening. The source of the signal was somewhere ahead, buried deep beneath the ruins. They had no idea what they would find, but one thing was certain: the Council's destruction of Earth was far from complete. Something or someone was still here. The captain turned to face the rest of the crew. "Prepare for the unknown. We don't know what we're walking into, but we need answers. We need to know who's still alive here, if anyone is." The group continued moving forward, pushing deeper into the ruins. As they ventured further, they began to notice strange markings on the walls, carvings, symbols, and strange glyphs etched into the remnants of old buildings. It was as though someone had been here before, marking the land, leaving a trail behind. One of the crew members, a linguist, bent down to examine the carvings. "This isn't human. These symbols, they're not from any known language. I've never seen anything like this before." The captain felt a chill run down their spine. The signal had brought them here, but what they were finding, what they were uncovering, was no longer just a mystery about Earth's fall. It was a mystery about something far older, something far more powerful than the Galactic Council could ever imagine. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed from beneath the ground, shaking the ruins around them. Dust and debris rained down from above, and the crew instinctively braced themselves. The captain's heart pounded as the ground trembled beneath their feet. This wasn't an earthquake. It was something else, a warning, a call. "What was that?" one of the crew members asked, his voice sharp with panic. "I don't know," the captain replied, scanning the ground for any signs of movement. "But it's not natural. Stay alert." The rumbling grew louder, more intense, until it felt as though the very earth itself was coming to life. And then, as quickly as it had started, the shaking stopped. The ground stilled, and the silence returned, more suffocating than before. "What the hell is happening?" another officer muttered, fear creeping into their voice. "I don't know," the captain said again, their mind racing. "But we're not alone." The team continued forward, their pace quickening as they neared the source of the signal. The ruins around them became more complex, more deliberate, as though they were being led towards something that had been waiting for them. The symbols on the walls grew more intricate, more detailed, and the air seemed to grow thicker with every step they took. And then, in the distance, they saw it. A massive structure, buried deep beneath the ruins, its towering form jutting out of the earth like a forgotten monolith. It was covered in the same strange symbols, its surface etched with patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. The signal was coming from inside. The captain took a deep breath, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. They had no idea what this structure was, what secrets it held, or what dangers awaited them inside. But one thing was certain: Earth's reckoning was only just beginning. As the crew moved toward the entrance, a sense of unease settled over them. The structure was ancient, but it felt alive, as though it had been waiting for their return. The captain glanced back at the team, each member tense and on edge, ready for whatever was to come. And then, just as they reached the entrance, the ground shook again, more violently this time, and the sky above them darkened, as if the planet itself was warning them to turn back. But there was no turning back now. The doors of the structure groaned open, revealing the darkness beyond. And in that darkness, something stirred. The doors creaked open with an unsettling groan, revealing a vast, shadowy chamber beyond. The air inside felt cold, sterile, as if it hadn't been disturbed in centuries. As the crew stepped forward, their footsteps echoing ominously in the stillness, the captain's mind raced. The structure felt wrong, alive, almost sentient, with an aura of energy that hummed just beneath the surface. It was as though the building itself had been waiting for them, watching them approach. The signal was unmistakable now. It was stronger, more defined. Yet there was something else tangled within it, something that didn't quite belong. The crew halted just inside the entrance, their eyes scanning the room, seeking any sign of life, any indication of what had caused the ground to tremble moments ago. But the chamber was empty, save for an array of intricate, alien technology scattered throughout. The walls were lined with strange machines, some of which seemed to be pulsing with a faint glow. Above them, the ceiling was adorned with the same cryptic symbols they had seen etched into the ruins outside, woven into an intricate pattern that seemed to move, shifting in the dim light as if it had a life of its own. The glow grew brighter the deeper they ventured into the chamber, casting eerie shadows across the crew's faces. "Stay close," the captain muttered, eyes never leaving the walls. The unease in the pit of their stomach had only grown with each step, the atmosphere pressing down on them like a physical weight. Something was watching them, something that had been waiting for them to find this place. A strange buzzing sound filled the room, almost imperceptible at first, but growing louder as they moved deeper. The air crackled with energy, and for the briefest moment, the captain thought they felt the ground beneath them tremble again. This time, it wasn't just the earth, it was the very building. Whatever force had awakened was now conscious of their presence, its attention fixed on them. The crew moved cautiously, their hands hovering over their weapons, ready for whatever might emerge from the shadows. The captain's mind churned, trying to piece together the mystery. What had been the purpose of this structure? What secrets had it kept hidden for so long? And what exactly had the Galactic Council erased when they destroyed Earth? The answers had to lie within these walls. The signal, once faint, was now unmistakable. It was coming from a central chamber located deep within the heart of the structure. Without speaking, the captain motioned for the crew to move forward. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified in the silence of the chamber. It felt like walking through a tomb, as though they were intruding on something ancient and sacred, something that had been untouched for eons. As they neared the center of the room, the walls began to shift, the symbols on them now glowing brighter, casting a sickly light across the faces of the crew. The buzzing sound intensified, rising into a high-pitched whine. A deep, low hum began to resonate through the floor beneath them, vibrating up their legs, making their bones ache. "What the hell is that?" one of the crew members whispered, fear creeping into their voice. "I don't know," the captain replied, keeping their voice steady. "But we need to find out." They reached the center of the chamber, where a massive structure loomed, a device, alien in design, towering over them like a mechanical monolith. Its surface was smooth, covered in the same glowing symbols that adorned the rest of the room. It pulsed with energy, sending out waves of power that seemed to distort the air around it. Crew gathered around the structure, hesitant, unsure of what to do. The signal was strongest here, but there was no indication of what they were meant to do next. The captain moved closer, their heart pounding as they placed a hand against the cold surface. The moment their fingers made contact, the hum in the room intensified, and the symbols on the device flared to life, glowing a brilliant, blinding white. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber. It wasn't a voice they could hear with their ears, but something that resonated deep within their minds, cutting through the air with a sharp, unnatural clarity. "Humanity is not welcome here." The captain's blood ran cold. The voice was not human. It was something ancient, something alien, and it carried a weight of authority that made the air feel thick with dread. The ground beneath them trembled again, and the buzzing sound that had been building to a deafening crescendo reached a peak. "Captain," one of the crew members gasped, stepping back, eyes wide with terror. "What's happening? What is this?" The captain didn't have an answer. They could feel the ground shaking more violently now, the walls cracking as if the structure itself was coming to life, responding to the disturbance in the air. The device at the center of the chamber began to hum louder, its glow intensifying until it was almost unbearable. The air felt electric, charged with a power unlike anything the captain had ever experienced. "You are too late." The voice echoed again, louder this time, reverberating through the very bones of the crew. It was no longer a warning, it was a declaration. The earth beneath their feet quaked again, this time with the force of something far more powerful than anything natural. A deep rumble shook the room, and the very walls of the chamber began to tremble, cracking and breaking as if they were being torn apart from the inside. The captain's instincts kicked in. Move. Get to the exit. But it was already too late. The ground beneath them splintered, and before anyone could react, the floor gave way, sending the crew tumbling into darkness. The last thing the captain saw before everything went black was the structure's pulsing light, the symbols on its surface glowing brighter until they were swallowed by the void. The fall seemed endless, a terrifying plunge into an abyss that had no bottom. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the falling stopped. The crew was sprawled across the cold, hard ground, disoriented, their hearts racing. They struggled to stand, but the world around them was unfamiliar, the landscape unlike anything they had seen before. They had been thrown into a new place, a place that seemed as ancient as the structure they had just discovered. And somewhere, deep in this alien world, something was waiting. And the captain knew, with a sinking feeling, that whatever it was, whatever they had unleashed, was not finished yet. The crew struggled to their feet, their bodies aching from the brutal fall. The air around them was thick with a strange energy, and the ground beneath their boots seemed to pulse, almost alive. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light of this unknown place, they took in their surroundings, an alien landscape, vast and barren, stretching out in every direction. Jagged rock formations towered overhead, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. The sky above was a sickly shade of violet, swirling with dark clouds that seemed to churn restlessly, as though disturbed by their arrival. "What just happened?" one of the crew members asked, voice trembling. "Where are we?" The captain surveyed the desolate terrain, their mind racing to piece together what they had just experienced. The fall had felt more like a descent into something otherworldly. The sensation of being dragged into this place, this twisted realm, was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The glowing device had activated, yes, but what had it done? And why had the ground shattered in such a violent display? "We need to move," the captain said, voice steady despite the unease that gnawed at them. "Stay close, everyone. Keep your eyes peeled." They started walking, but the silence around them was deafening. There were no animals, no sounds of life. It was as if the world itself had been abandoned long ago, left to decay in the emptiness. But the air it felt charged, as if something unseen was watching them. Something ancient and powerful. It didn't take long for the crew to realize they weren't alone. From the shadows of the towering rock formations, figures began to emerge, tall, gaunt beings, their forms flickering in and out of existence like phantoms. Their eyes glowed with a cold alien light, and their movements were unnatural, gliding across the ground with a fluidity that seemed to defy physics. These beings, were they ghosts? Were they real? The captain couldn't say for sure, but one thing was certain: they weren't human. "Captain," one of the crew members whispered, fear evident in their voice. "What are they?" The captain's hand instinctively went to the weapon at their side, though they knew it would likely do little against whatever these creatures were. "Stay calm," they instructed. "Stay alert. We don't know if they're hostile." The ghostly beings began to circle the crew, their movements slow and deliberate. The crew watched, breath held, as the figures drew closer, their glowing eyes never leaving the humans. There was an unsettling quietness about them, an eerie sense of foreboding that made the hairs on the back of the captain's neck stand on end. Without warning, one of the figures spoke, its voice a low, rasping whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You should not have come here," it said. The words echoed in the captain's mind, reverberating like a dark echo through the vast emptiness. The captain's heart skipped a beat. The voice, it was as though it was speaking directly into their consciousness. But who or what was it? "We didn't have a choice," the captain replied, their voice firm despite the growing tension. "We're here to stop the destruction of Earth, to take back what was stolen from us." The ghostly beings remained silent for a long moment, their eyes glowing brighter, their forms flickering like they were struggling to hold their shape. Then, the leader of the figures stepped forward, its form solidifying as it approached the crew. "Your world is lost," the being said, its voice now filled with an ominous weight. "It was taken by the Galactic Council, yes, but it was never truly yours to begin with." The captain's heart sank as the figure's words hit like a hammer. What did it mean? Were they not the true heirs to Earth's legacy? Were they not fighting for the survival of humanity? "What do you mean?" the captain demanded, stepping forward. "What are you talking about?" The figure's glowing eyes narrowed. "The Council's actions were not without reason. Your species, you are not the first. Earth's destruction was only the beginning of a much larger cycle. You are simply pawns in a game much older than you can comprehend." The words struck with a sharpness that left the crew reeling. Pawns? What game was this being referring to? The captain had thought they were fighting for humanity's survival, for their homeworld's rebirth. But now, there were questions that threatened to unravel everything they had believed. "And now you will be the ones to suffer," the figure continued, its voice growing colder. "You are too late to undo what has already been set in motion." Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the ground beneath them. The air grew thick with a crackling energy, and the sky above flashed with lightning. It felt like the very atmosphere was alive, alive with a fury that threatened to consume everything in its path. The figures, now joined by dozens of others, began to move with increasing speed, encircling the humans. The captain's mind raced. This was not just about revenge anymore. This was about something much larger, something ancient and far more dangerous than the Galactic Council. The destruction of Earth had been a part of something much bigger, a plan that had been in motion for centuries, if not longer. "We need to get back to the ship," the captain barked, grabbing the arm of the nearest crew member. "Now." But as they turned to flee, the ground beneath them began to crack open, deep fissures splitting the earth in every direction. From the depths of these cracks, shadows rose, twisted, monstrous figures that towered over the crew, their eyes glowing with malice. It was clear now. There was no escape, no easy way out of this nightmare. The captain's heart pounded as the sky grew darker, the crackling energy intensifying. The shadowy figures loomed closer, their twisted forms taking shape with a terrifying clarity. The crew was surrounded. "Prepare yourself," the captain said, steeling their resolve. "We may not make it out of here alive, but we will fight." And in that moment, as the storm of chaos and destruction closed in around them, the captain realized just how high the stakes had truly become. The fight for Earth's survival was far from over. It had only just begun, and the true enemy was still waiting, somewhere in the darkness. The tension in the air was unbearable, the crackling energy surging like an unstoppable force. The shadowy figures closed in, their glowing eyes flickering with malice. The crew had nowhere to run. It felt like the end of everything, Earth's destruction, humanity's struggles, all culminating in this moment. But just as the monstrous figures raised their hands, preparing to strike, something unexpected happened. A sudden flash of light erupted from the horizon, cutting through the darkness. It was so bright that it nearly blinded the crew, and for a moment, the very ground beneath them seemed to tremble in fear. The shadowy figures froze, their eerie glowing eyes locked onto the source of the light. For the briefest moment, it seemed as if everything had paused, time itself holding its breath. The captain instinctively raised their arm, shielding their eyes from the blinding brilliance. Their mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. Was this the arrival of reinforcements? Or had something more powerful than these creatures intervened? The light grew more intense, and a low, humming sound filled the air like the hum of an ancient engine awakening from a long slumber. The captain could feel it, deep in their bones. Something ancient, something powerful was coming. Then it happened. A massive, sleek ship, its design unlike anything the crew had ever seen, emerged from the swirling violet sky. It was enormous, dwarfing the landscape around it, its surface glistening with an otherworldly sheen. The ship seemed to shimmer, its structure alive with glowing patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the energy around them. As the ship descended, the monstrous figures recoiled, their once menacing forms flickering, as if losing their grip on this reality. The captain's heart pounded in their chest as they watched the spectacle unfold. What was happening? Who was controlling this ship? The ship landed with a heavy thud, its massive hull sinking into the cracked earth, sending a shockwave rippling through the ground. A door slid open at the base of the ship, and out stepped a figure tall, humanoid, but not quite human. Their skin glowed faintly, and their eyes held a depth that seemed to pierce straight through the captain's soul. They were draped in armor that shimmered with an iridescent glow, their movements graceful yet commanding. The crew stood frozen, unsure of what to make of this mysterious figure. Was this their ally? Were they here to help, or had another power entered the fray, more dangerous than anything they had faced so far? The figure raised their hand, and the shadowy beings, the very creatures that had surrounded them, flinched. The air crackled with tension as the captain and the crew watched in disbelief. The figure's presence alone seemed to command the environment around them, bending it to their will. You're one of them," the captain said, a strange sense of recognition flooding their mind. "A member of the Galactic Council?" The figure smiled, but it was not a reassuring smile. It was a smile that spoke of knowledge, of power beyond understanding. "I am not of the Council," the figure replied, their voice deep and resonant, echoing in the captain's mind. "I am of something older, a force that even the Council fears." The ground trembled again, but this time it wasn't the result of the monstrous figures, it was the ship, or, more accurately, the power contained within it. The captain could feel the energy coursing through the air, and for the first time, they realized the true scale of what they were up against. The fight for Earth was never about a war between two sides. No, it was about something far grander, a cosmic struggle between powers so ancient that humanity had never even been aware of them. The monstrous beings started to flicker once more, their forms dissolving into the air as if they were no longer anchored to this reality. Their glowing eyes dimmed, and the tension that had suffocated the crew began to dissipate. The ship, with its otherworldly figure, held the key to ending the chaos that had been unleashed on Earth. But there was one last revelation that the captain was not prepared for. The figure turned, locking eyes with the captain. "You have no idea who you truly are," they said, their voice laced with mystery. "The true enemy is not the Council. It's not the shadow beings you've encountered. It's within you, within your very DNA." The captain blinked, confusion clouding their thoughts. "What are you talking about?" they demanded. "What does this have to do with us?" The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and the air around them pulsed with an even greater intensity. "Humanity has always been a tool, a pawn in a much larger game. But now, the truth is coming to light. The Galactic Council didn't destroy Earth to annihilate you. They did it because you were never meant to survive. But there are others who will fight to see your kind rise again." As the words sank in, the captain's mind raced, trying to piece together the meaning behind this cryptic message. Were they being manipulated? Was there a deeper purpose behind everything they had fought for? The figure's words were interrupted by a sudden surge of energy, and the shadowy beings vanished completely, leaving nothing but the silence of the broken world around them. The crew watched in stunned silence, unsure of whether to believe what they had just heard or whether it was some form of manipulation. The figure turned to the ship and stepped toward it, the ground beneath them shifting as the ship's energy hummed louder. "This is only the beginning," they said, their voice full of certainty. "The reckoning is not over. The real battle lies ahead." With that, they entered the ship, and the massive craft began to rise once more, leaving the crew standing in the ruins of a world they once knew. The captain's thoughts raced, the weight of the figure's words echoing in their mind. Humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something far greater, something beyond the stars. The ship disappeared into the sky, and the captain stood alone, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing in. The fight for Earth was far from over. The true enemy was still out there, waiting in the dark reaches of the cosmos. And humanity's reckoning had only just begun. What would they do next? How would they prepare for the battles ahead? Only time would tell. As the days passed, after the mysterious ship vanished into the sky, the Earth remained in a stunned silence. What had just happened? The events that had unfolded in those final moments felt like the shattering of the very fabric of reality itself. Humanity had always believed in the existence of other civilizations, but no one had prepared for the overwhelming truth that now stood before them. The Galactic Council was no longer the focal point of their fight. Something far older, more ancient, more powerful than any of them had ever imagined had just entered the equation. The crew, disoriented by the unexpected encounter, gathered in their makeshift command center. It was a simple room, built out of the remnants of their old world, but it felt like their last hope. Maps of the planet, detailed schematics of the once great cities that now lay in ruins, and screens that displayed a dark, looming reality surrounded them. The captain stood at the center, eyes drawn to the spot where the ship had disappeared. What the figure had said still echoed in their mind. Humanity had been a pawn, a tool. But to what end? And what did the ship's disappearance mean for their future? It was at that moment that the captain knew they couldn't wait around to figure it all out. The world had been torn apart by forces beyond their control, but humanity still had the power to shape what came next. If the Galactic Council had destroyed Earth to prevent humans from realizing their true potential, then perhaps the crew humanity had to find a way to defy that fate. With the appearance of the ancient figure, the captain realized the battle was not over. It had only just begun. The figure had mentioned that the true battle lay ahead, and for the first time since Earth's fall, the captain felt a surge of hope. They weren't just survivors, they were warriors. They had the will to fight back against an enemy they didn't fully understand yet. The crew immediately set to work, gathering what little resources they had left. The network of survivors across Earth had dwindled, but it still existed. They needed to unite what was left of humanity to form a resistance capable of facing the unknown threat that loomed beyond the stars. But even as they began this arduous task, strange things began to happen. Across the world, small groups of humans, those who had long been hidden in the shadows, began to make their presence known. They arrived in various forms, some on foot, others in ships crafted from the remains of ancient Earth technology. They all seemed to share a common purpose, a singular goal: to fight back against whatever dark force had set its sights on humanity. It was then that the captain received a message, encrypted and delivered from an unexpected source. The message was from an old contact, someone who had vanished long ago, presumed dead in the aftermath of Earth's destruction. The transmission was unclear, but the captain knew it was urgent. They had to act quickly. The message spoke of a hidden network of ancient tech, a force from beyond the Council's reach that had been watching over Earth for millennia. The technology was embedded deep beneath the Earth's surface, waiting for humanity's true reckoning. This was the key to unlocking humanity's hidden potential, the same power that had been feared by the Council. If they could tap into it, humanity might just have a chance at survival. But the message also came with a warning. There were those who would try to stop them, individuals who would do anything to ensure the power remained dormant. The captain understood that now. The fight wasn't just against the Council, it was against every force that had sought to hold humanity back for centuries. There was no more time to waste. The crew had found their first lead, a hidden facility beneath the ruins of one of Earth's oldest cities. They would need to journey deep into the heart of their fractured world to uncover the technology that could tip the scales in their favor. And with each passing moment, the reality of their situation became clearer. They would face unimaginable dangers, both from without and within. Old enemies, factions, and even ancient creatures would be waiting, determined to prevent humanity from rising again. But it was a risk they had to take. The crew set out, determined to find the hidden facility and unlock its secrets. As they traveled through the desolate landscapes, the signs of the Galactic Council's attack were everywhere. Ruins that once were cities lay in ruin, abandoned and lifeless. The scars of the Council's devastation were clear, but the crew knew they had to move forward. The past, however painful, could no longer hold them back. The future belonged to those who dared to fight. Arriving at the hidden facility, the crew fought their way through the last defenses, ancient sentinels designed to protect the secrets buried deep within. When they finally breached the core of the complex, they found something that took their breath away. A massive machine, its surface alive with patterns of energy, hummed in the center of a cavernous chamber. Its purpose was unclear, but there was no doubt it was a key to unlocking the power the captain had sought for so long. They could feel it, deep within their bones, the hum of energy, the potential of an untapped force. This was the reckoning the figure had spoken of, humanity's last hope. But just as they were about to initiate the process, a new force arrived, another fleet, much larger than anything they had encountered before. The Galactic Council had returned, and with it, their most powerful weapons yet. The stakes were higher than ever before. The captain and the crew had one choice: unleash the power within the machine and risk everything, or face extinction at the hands of the Council. They had no choice but to fight back. The machine activated, sending shockwaves through the earth as the last remnants of humanity's power surged to life. The battle that followed was fierce, intense, and devastating. The forces of the Council clashed with humanity's desperate resistance, both sides pushing to their limits. But in the end, humanity emerged victorious. The Galactic Council's forces were overwhelmed by the sheer willpower of those who had survived. Their once mighty empire brought to its knees. As the battle ended and the dust settled, the captain looked out over the horizon. They had done it. Humanity had fought back. Earth had been avenged. But the victory came at a cost. The captain, battered and bruised, stood with their crew, looking at the future with both hope and uncertainty. They had unlocked the power that the Council feared, but there was still much to learn about the ancient forces that had been revealed. Humanity's true reckoning had only just begun. The stars above, once symbols of an unknown threat, now held the promise of a new dawn. And humanity, finally free from the chains that had bound it for centuries, stood ready to take its place among the stars. The journey ahead was uncertain. The reckoning was theirs to shape. And with that, the story of Earth's return was only just beginning.